GettingPositiveKarmaNow.com presents Bhagavad Gita for All, lectures by Nalan K. Narula, recorded in front of a live audience.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Last time we had completed text 12 of chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is about devotional service, and I'll just recap briefly that Krishna said to Arjuna, based on his question, how he should meditate on Krishna, how he should think about him, and what is in fact devotional service. So Krishna has told him that basically if you fix your mind on me and meditate on me, if you worship me, giving up all your activities and be devoted to me exclusively without deviation, engaged in devotional service and meditating on his personal form, for such a person liberation from birth and death is very quick, and fixing the mind and intelligence on Krishna is what will deliver one from this birth and death situation and liberate them. So then he goes on to say in text 9 of chapter 12 that if you cannot fix your mind on me without deviation, then follow the regulated principles of devotional service, and then you will develop a desire to attain to me. And if you cannot even practice the regulated principles, the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, then just try and work for me. Work for my sake. Because by doing that, by working for my sake, you will come to the perfection stage. And even if you are unable to do that, if you are not able to work in that consciousness, then give up the results of your work. Act by giving up the results of your work. In other words, not be attached to them. Be self-situated. Be situated in the self. And if you cannot even do that, then engage in cultivation of knowledge. And better than cultivation of knowledge is meditation. Now, meditation is, he's talking here about the meditation on the impersonal form or the universal form or the Brahm Jyoti, not his two-handed personal form, because that will eventually get you to the point of developing a higher understanding. And he is saying better than meditating on the impersonal is renunciation of fruits of action. So he has said that a number of times in the previous conversation here, that renouncing is very powerful. Karamphal tyaga. Because by such renunciation one gets peace, shanti. So that is possible if you are detaching yourself from the results of what you are doing and asking for. Typically, as healers, we are renouncing the results of the action in the sense that we say it is divine will that is to be done, or Reiki's will be done, which means that we are not attached to the results. Krishna has said this many times. Our lineage of Reiki masters, Master Takata also said this, that only God's healing energy is in my hand, not the results. It doesn't mean that if the results are not there, the energy is not working or God is not with me. It is just that the results are coming in a different way, which you may or may not be aware of. So that's where we are at text 12. So today we continue with this on Bhakti Yoga, chapter 12, text 13 and 14. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara sama dukha sukha kshami santushta satatam yogi yatatma drid nishchay may arpita manobuddhir yo mad bhakta sa me priya. One who is not envious to any living entity, and he is friendly to all, and he is kindly to them, with no sense of ownership, proprietorship, nirmama, nirahankar, without the false ego, which means not considering the bodily designations, because that is the ego, the expansion of the body in terms of family members and relationships, so and things that you might own or things that you have acquired. So without the sense of ownership and proprietorship, without the false ego bodily concept, equal to being equal, sama, in dukha sukha, in distress and happiness, shami santushta satatam, always satisfied and forgiving. He is a yogi, yata atma, engaging in devotional service, drid nishchay, with determination, mai arpita mana buddhi ya mat bhakta sa me priya. So one who engages with determination, satisfied in this devotional service with me, to me, satisfied in this devotional service to me, and his mind engaged and his intelligence engaged in such an activity, and he is in harmony with what is required by Krishna, such a one is very dear to me, Krishna says. So in text 15, he goes on to say, Krishna says in text 15, Yasman nod vijate loko, lokan nod vijate chaya, harsha marsha bhayod veger, mukto ya sa cha me priya. For whom no one is put into difficulty or is disturbed. Udvichete is disturbed, agitated. And those who are not disturbed by anxiety for anyone. Lokat na advijate, not disturbed by anyone. Harsha marsha, whether in happiness or distress. And bhay, who are not in fear, not in anxiety. Udvega, anxiety. Mukta, freed. Yah sacha me priya. Such a person is very dear to me. So for one who never causes or puts into difficulty anyone, and who himself is not disturbed by anxiety, does not create anxiety for others, and who is steady in happiness and distress, is very dear to me. So these are qualities of a person who is rightly placed on the devotional path. And this is a state of practice that one has to undergo. And he does not deviate in his goal, although he may have fall downs, but he gets up and tries again. He makes an effort again. He endeavors on this path only. And then we have text 16. Anapeksha shuchir daksha udasino gata vyata sarvarambha parityagi yo mad bhakta same priya. One who is neutral and detached, anapeksha. Shuchi, pure. Daksha, expert. Udasina, free from care. Not sadness, sorrow, no lamentation. Gata vyata, freed from all distress. Sarvarambha parityagi, he is renouncing all extraneous efforts, all endeavors. Ya mad bhakta same priya, such a one is very dear to me, such a person is a devotee. So sarv arambha parityagi, renouncer of efforts that normally people make, the struggle to acquire things. He is also saying that what normally people would do and try and work for greater and greater results in the material sense. A person who doesn't do that, but who may work for me, he may work equally hard or even harder for the sake of Krishna's purpose, for the sake of furthering his goals, or for doing anything for the purpose of Krishna consciousness and progressing it. And a person who is free from cares, free from all pains, and he does not strive for these kind of results, such a person is very dear to me. So, it is to be understood that it is not that one is not required to act, but one is not required to excessively endeavor. So this theme has been there throughout, that Krishna is advising right from the beginning of his conversation with Arjun, that one should not overly endeavor, one should not be struggling and striving hard to such an extent that you are not understanding the purpose of life, and it is very disturbing if you are struggling constantly. One should be happy with gain that comes of its own accord, with an effort which is not excessive. So one needs to understand this in a perspective that is aimed at the purpose of pleasing Krishna or following according to his guidance. In text 17 he says, Yo na harshyati na dveshati, na sochati na kankshati, subh ashubh parityagi, bhaktiman ya sa me priya, bhaktiman ya sa me priya. So again and again he's saying, these are the people who are very dear to me. Who are these in this statement? That one who is not grabbing or grasping pleasure, one who is not grabbing or grasping sadness or unhappiness or grief, one who is not attached to either, one who is neither lamenting and nor grieving, not complaining, nor he is desiring the good or the bad, and who renounces the auspicious and the inauspicious things. Parityagi. So renouncing the auspicious and inauspicious, what does that mean? He is renouncing attachment to those by being detached from the results of what he is getting, whether they are auspicious or inauspicious. And as far as the healers are concerned, when they are doing their healing for everything that they are undergoing in their life, they need to have this background or this idea that the result is not legislated by them as a certainty, but it comes according to divine will. And that helps you to renounce. If you are attached to the results, no, it must happen this way, that way, and I am very upset because it's not happening. That is not the symptom of a person who is progressed far in Krishna consciousness on this path. But with practice he will, provided they understand why they need to be detached from the results. Because again and again it is stated the results are created by so many factors which are not immediately available to you, not known to you. And therefore things are happening in the normal course. They have been set into motion in the past, and you should not either lament nor get very happy when you find something which ordinary people would normally find cause to be happy. You should not be excessively happy, and you should not be excessively unhappy. You should be neutral. How can you be neutral? Well, my spiritual master used to say that if you are excessively happy, you are using up your happiness quota in terms of your karma, and if you are excessively unhappy, you are using up your quota of unhappiness, but then that is multiplying. So don't do that. So consider that if you are having some distress, you are using up your distress quota, so be happy with that. And if you are very happy about something, don't be too happy, because understand you're using up your happiness quota. So it is not such a great situation to be celebrating too much or lamenting too much. In fact, here it is saying no lamentation and no celebration. Because, why? Because you're knowledgeable. Because you're not grabbing it. It's coming, fine. If it's not coming, also fine. But this doesn't mean that we are indifferent. We are not indifferent. We do what is needed, but we are not grasping it to our bosom, so to speak. Neither the lamentation nor the celebration. So renouncing both the auspicious and the inauspicious, because you know that they are coming out of binding consequences of karma, the auspicious as well as the inauspicious, and they will come and go. So you need not be too concerned with that. That is not your main objective or focus in your life. So your mind and intelligence must be focused elsewhere, and that is in the service of Krishna. So text 18 and 19 of chapter 12, devotional service, we have Sama shatrau cha mitra cha tatha manapamanayo sitoshna sukha dukheshu sama sanga vivarjita tulya ninda stutir mauni santushtu yena kenachit aniketa sthira matir bhaktiman me priyo nara. Sama shatrau cha mitra cha, one who is equal to the person who is perceived as enemy, shatru, and one who is the friend. And cha tatha man apamanayo, in honor and dishonor, shita usna, cold and heat, sukha dukheshu, happiness and distress, equipoised, sama, sanga vivarjita, free from all association, santushta, satisfied, and he is somehow satisfied in this, and aniketa, having no attachment to residence, where he is, whether he is living in a palace or he is living in a hut, it is not any attachment there. And he is fixed with determination, engaged in my devotional service. Bhaktiman me priyo nara. All these other factors are distractions and obstacles on the way to focusing with determination on devotional service. So we need to look at this. What exactly is the expansion of this statement? And one of the key statements here is, the key words used is Sangha Vivarjita, free from all association. So free from association of good and bad, free from association of friend and enemy, honor, dishonor, heat and cold, happiness, distress, equipoised in all these, satisfied somehow, and not attached to any residence, fixed in knowledge and engaged in Krishna's devotional service. So a person can be living in any situation. It is not an obstacle to his devotional service. Govind Maharaj, my spiritual master, used to say, a person can be in jail and still progress his spiritual life. It is not an obstacle, because he has to maintain this understanding. Wherever he might be, whatever situation he might be, of body, of mind, any attachment to bodily condition. If I am very sick or very ill, I am not overly disturbed, because I know that that is not the essential. Ultimately, this body must be done with, and all things coming from the body. All these things that are mentioned are actually coming from a bodily concept of life. So one should be free of the designation of the body. Earlier he has said that one should be free of these expansion of the bodily concept, the sense of proprietorship. Nirmama nirahankara in the text 14, that a person should be nirmama nirahankara. So all this ahankar is actually coming, and this proprietorship, nirmama, mama means mine, is coming from the bodily concept of life. So once that bodily concept of life is put in its proper perspective, that this is only a vehicle or a means to achieve my goal of service to Krishna, then things are easier to understand and the attitude is easier to work with. So here he is saying in the 18th and 19th text that being fixed in the knowledge is very important. And being fixed in that knowledge while engaging in devotional service, that is the key, and such a one is very dear to me. And then we have text 20, the concluding statement in this sequence of the conversation with Arjuna. Lord Krishna is saying, Ye tu dharmamritam idam yathoktam pariupasate shraddhadhan mat parma bhaktas te ativa me priya. One who follows fully, one who is engaged completely in this path of dharma with this nectarian understanding, as has been stated by me, Krishna is saying, and who follows this with Shraddha, with faith, Mat Parma, taking me as the supreme source of all sources, taking me as supreme of everything. Such a devotee, Bhakta, te ativa me priya, they are extremely dear to me. So one who puts Krishna above all is extremely dear, and who engages fully with Shraddha. So Shraddha means faith, and the word comes from the root of Shrad. Shrad means one who is receptive. So faith comes out of receptivity. So if you are not receptive, there is no faith. And if you will not have the practical faith or understanding, it is very difficult to have a theoretical faith. So when you are practicing your healing process and you are seeing what changes take place in your life, and then you engage your mind and intelligence in meditation and understanding of these processes, then you become faithful, you become receptive, you become firm in your faith, and your Shraddha is increased. But the deviating factors are also mentioned there. Attachment to body, attachment to the expansions of the body, the false ego, in other words. Attachment to certain aspects of things that happen in life, honor versus dishonor, heat versus cold, happiness versus distress, fame, infamy, defame. And a person who is pure, free from contamination, that means he is pure in body and mind. At least, physical cleanliness is one, and then internal cleanliness, internal cleanliness by chanting the Mahamantra and engaging in your healing practices. Anything that is, he has mentioned dharma. Now dharmasya he mentions here in, let me see. It's strange, I can't find that. Anyway, he has mentioned that one should be on the path of this dharma, and dharma means to be on the path of your essential occupational duty, and anything that helps you to get there is also dharma. So if you are meditating on Krishna, if you are chanting Hare Krishna, if you are doing your healing, these are all instruments to getting you to the goal of dharma. They are all considered to be part of dharma. So that is a point that I wanted to make here. So whatever you're engaged in, whether if you are thinking of Krishna, that is Krishna consciousness. If you are chanting his name, that is Krishna consciousness. If you are discussing about him, that is Krishna consciousness. If you are working in the way to become free of attachment and free of the consequences of the body, which is through the healing process, that is Krishna consciousness. So in every way, if you are with determination engaged in such a way, Krishna says that a person who is like that, who is engaged in my service in this way, he is mat bhakta sa me priya, very, very dear to me. So this is, I would recommend that you study. This is a key chapter for you to study. And this is a very small chapter. It is only 20 texts, 20 shloks, but it has everything in terms of the guidance that you need for devotional service. So this is a chapter you need to meditate on again and again and again. And if there's any one chapter that you need to make your own, is this one, in terms of your understanding, because this is the cornerstone knowledge of how you are to act in life as a healer, as a devotee of Krishna, and what is it that you need to pay attention to. So these are things that you will come across in daily life, and these are things that you need to pay attention to and try and benchmark yourself against this. Where are you? It is not meant for you to be critical of yourself or unhappy or distressed. It is just for you to see, where am I on the path? So how much of this have you brought into your life? How much of this have you incorporated into your life? That is very, very critical. So all these guidances have been given to you as to how you should work and what is the ascending path. If you can do this, fine. If you can't do this, do the next, do the next, do the next. And ultimately, if you just act in Krishna consciousness, doing everything as for Krishna, then renouncing the results of your work, that is giving you not only peace and happiness and satisfaction, it is progressing you very quickly to the end point of being liberated from material bindings. So again, I will refer you to these texts 13 to 20, and I suggest that you study these again and again and see where you are, because in the process of healing yourself, you are seeing that this is happening already. The results are coming or not coming. So why be attached to them? Only be attached to doing what is that you are required to do in terms of the healing, and attached to doing what you need to do to progress it, but you do not endeavor excessively for anything. You don't go out and act like other people in the material world. So these are the qualities that are desirable for a devotee to have, and one can understand from this that a person who is not a devotee actually has no good qualities whatsoever. It is very clear that a person who is not on this path has no good qualities, no matter what the world may think of them. So somebody may be considered a very nice person, a very pious person, or a very sweet person, but if he does not have these qualities and he does not have this approach then he has no good qualities. If he is not having any of this, then he is not to be looked upon as somebody that we should emulate. But look at those who have such qualities as described by Krishna, and begin to understand how that works in their life and in your life, and see in your life you will also be having a number of these qualities working in the background, or these situations working in your background if you've been a healer for a while, because it creates a natural detachment. So the process is developing these qualities. So you need to work out how much have these developed. What can I do to further these? Okay. So we will conclude here. We have now completed chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita on devotional service, and next time we will review this again. And if anybody has any questions today, we will take some questions now.
So Prabhupada has a couple of questions he
Yes.
asked prior to the class.
Okay.
Shall I take them now?
Yes.
Question 1. What is love? Seeing the war of Mahabharata, it appears that the humanity has never been simple. It also appears that justice and righteousness are more important than love and compassion, as the divine in flesh and blood, in brackets Sri Krishna himself, took an inactive part in the war. One needs to have killing spirit, in brackets again, and other emotions like anger, hate, etc. to be victorious in war. My worry is that this may eclipse the meditativeness and other such qualities of the healer. What are your instructions for people like me who are in profession of arms and are healers too?
Krishna is talking to Arjun, who is a warrior, and he is giving him this advice. And he has told him earlier that you should go ahead and fight and kill these people, be they your relatives, friends, worshipful people even, because I have decided that they are to be killed and they are already dead. I have already killed them. You only go ahead and take the credit for it. So when you work with that consciousness, there is no hatred, there is no anger. Those are when you are not having this understanding. So Arjun said, I'm feeling very depressed and demoralized, because how can I fight my relatives and my superiors who have been my teachers and so on. So Krishna is saying these emotions are unworthy. So similarly, the emotions of anger and hatred are also unworthy. Krishna has made it very clear that you do not look at them as your enemies or your friends. You look at them as people who you have to act according to your duty, your dharma. So the warrior dharma is that you defend, and the population, the janta, the populace, and the kingdom, and there is no need for hatred for that. In fact, today I was reading in the newspaper a very interesting story, that there was a doctor, an MD from AIIMS, who has become a police officer, and they were having a battle with terrorists, and he shot him, and he was shot in the stomach, the terrorist, and the doctor saved his life. So he said, bullets are flying, so what? I'm a doctor. I have to fulfill that part of my duty. So while I'm defending also, but if I see somebody who's dying, it is my duty to save him, and he did. And that fellow is very happy, and he is spilling a lot of information about the terrorist organization. So this is a very nice balance between being a warrior and a healer. So the same way, he is not hating him, he's just killing him or shooting them to defend the greater purpose, which is sanctioned by the government, by the authority. And he is fighting against an enemy, against the state. So the enemy against the state is being fought, but he is still giving them the proper care or attention if needed. So he is neither enemy nor friend. So that is the way that one conducts oneself. So there are rules of engagement on the battlefield, the so-called Geneva Convention and all that. But this is something that is spontaneously happening because of the nature of the person involved in this encounter. So as a warrior, as a fighter, as an army person, your job is to defend, but you don't have to have hate. You may get, let's say, an adrenaline boost while you're fighting, because now it is a fight and flight response, that you're all charged up, and you may be very gung-ho and encourage your troops to fight by all kinds of means, but there need not be any hatred. It is just the heat of battle or the moment that you are now getting some extraordinary energy to fight. So Krishna is saying, you fight for me, I have decided they are to be killed, so you be my instrument. So if you are in such a position, you just be the instrument and do your duty, that's it. Whatever it takes, but there is no need for hatred. Yes, Sabrina, you had a question.
I had a similar thought in my mind.
Right.
And I have another question.
Yes.
That I'm also sometimes very charged up, and I was thinking that I should not be so charged up, because I'm getting too involved in that I have 1 year, this is what I can achieve in this 1 year, and then there will be no time, or I won't be in the same position.
There is no harm in being charged up to do your job. If you see that now it is time bound and you need to finish something which is on the path of improving and providing service and discharging your duty honorably, I think there is nothing wrong with being very charged up. I think it's good. There is no injunction against being enthusiastic to perform your duty. You know that there is a limited time. So Parikshit Maharaj asked this question, I have 7 days to live. How do I act? How do I live? And then the whole Bhagavatam was spoken. So yes, we all have limited time. In various ways, we have limited time. In our jobs, our occupations, professions, and then in the body. So if you are finding there's a limited time and you have set yourself some goals, and you achieve those goals, or you try and strive towards them. You do whatever you can without attachment to the results. So that is a balancing act that one has to do. That you're enthusiastic to do something, fine, but that enthusiasm should not be that there is a payoff at the end of the day, that some result has to come. So that is not the proper attitude actually. So I have to do this because I want to improve things and make it better and make a lasting protocol that will be followed. So that is probably the better way to go, if you can make such protocols that other people follow, and so that your legacy is continued in that way. Yes. Yes.
And that, is there any minor difference between giving up the results of your work and renunciation of the fruits of action?
Difference between giving up the results of your work and renunciation of the fruits of action, they are the same thing. Yeah. Giving up the results means that I am not attached to the results of my work. I am doing the work, not because of some expected result. Because if I have that in mind, then when it doesn't come, I am going to be very unhappy. And if it comes, I am going to be very happy. So the happiness and unhappiness aspect should not be linked to results. That is your internal state. You have done your work to the extent that you have done it, honestly discharged your duty. You have not excessively endeavored. But it doesn't mean that you have a totally laid back attitude also. You are not neglecting things. That is enough. So in that sense, you have renounced the results, that I have done my duty, I have done my job, I have done what I had to do, and beyond perhaps, and that's it. And if the result is happening, it's happening. If it's not happening, well, I will still keep striving, but I am not attached to it. Where you are given some unattainable goals, this is also applicable, where sometimes in work, if you are working in an organization, they'll give you some goal which everybody knows they can't meet it. Targets, whether it's sales targets or anything else. It is just a stick to whip the people along. So either you understand how this game is played and play it, or you change your job. There are no other options. You can't say that I must stay there also and be miserable also, and I'm having tension also. Results can't come, and if they don't come, well, they're not going to come, because everybody knows these are impossible targets. So there are organizations that do that for some reason, and everybody fails. So that develops an idea within the people that they're incompetent or they're not working well enough, and the management may reinforce it. So that is very bad management, very poor management. If they understand it and you don't get sucked into that whole cycle, then you can remain satisfied and you can be happy. You don't have to be anxious, because you know that is the norm. This person is going to say like this only. Why should I get overly disturbed? ठीक है ना?
There is, I'll come back to Prabhupada second question later. Shipra, in continuity, she's saying,
Yes.
but why we always take stand or believe in something, one side or the other? How to remain neutral to both sides and yet with conviction be on one side?
If you are on the side of Krishna, then there is nothing else that matters. You have to see, is this progressing my Krishna consciousness? If it is progressing you on the path of devotional service, absolutely you be attached to that and you be on that side. That is what Krishna is saying. How can you do it in a vacuum? You can't. So you have to have an alternative. So if you don't have one side or the other side, if you have Krishna's side, then everything is taken care of. Then you know how to act. If you are being obstructed in your path to Krishna consciousness, you can give up anything. Krishna has said that person should not be attached to the bodily concept. So a person can give up family, he can give up big house, he can live anywhere, Krishna has said, and that is the way to go. So if you are having that firm realization, you can do it. You cannot do it artificially. So it depends what is the degree of your realization, and that will develop only when you are associating with other devotees who are advanced, who are other healers who are advanced, who show by example, or you can see by their example that they have these qualities and they have actually done these things. So in pursuit of Krishna consciousness, we can give up anything and we can accept anything. So we can give up something that is, people are thinking, oh, such a big thing gave up, and he can accept anything which is small, saying, oh, how he is doing like this, such a small thing, living in such a humble circumstance or situation. It doesn't matter, because these are all designations that are going to end with the body. The only thing that will remain is your endeavor to Krishna consciousness and how you work towards it.
She is further asking, is being equipoised equal to not having any feelings or emotions, even if that of joy? Can celebration be an acknowledgement of blessings, or is it always an aspect of attachment?
See, the ultimate thing is that one must be very Atmaram, internally happy. Take satisfaction in your inner self. Krishna is saying this in this chapter also, that one who is taking satisfaction in his self, who is rightly placed, then he is not disturbed by these other things that may come and go. So these emotions may come, these emotions may go, but you are not disturbed by it. Why? Because you are situated in the self. Krishna says that in the middle of this chapter 12, that one who is situated in the self is equipoised, he is not disturbed. So that is the status. That is how one must be. He says, let's see if I can find that text somewhere. Yeah, in text 8 he is saying that you fix your mind on me, fix your intelligence on me, and engage in works accordingly. So, maya eva mana adhatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, niveshasyasi mayi eva ata urdhvam na sanshaya. So, if you fix your mind on me and engage your intelligence on me and apply all these things, then you lead a life which is actually living in me, because you are guided by this. You are guided by me to work in that direction. So there's no sides, there's no feelings. Feelings are coming and going. So you have to be steady. Atha chittam samadhatu na sakshnoi na sakshnoshi mai sthiram abhyasa yogena tato mam ichhaptam dhananjaya. So if you cannot follow this aspect of engaging your mind on me without deviation, then you follow the principles of yoga, bhakti yoga. In this way you will attain a desire to attain to me. And then if you cannot do that, then just try to work for me. Mat artham. Then just work for me. Mat artham api karmani kurvan siddhim avapyasi. So just work for me. Then you are unable to do that, give up all the results of your action. Sarva kama phal tyagam. Sarva karma phal tyagam. Then, and be yata atmavan. Be self-situated. Situated in yourself. So you have to be atmaram, situated in yourself. And ultimately, happiness, unhappiness, distress, not distress, is going to come and go. You cannot stop it. So Krishna is saying that why are you getting carried away with that? That is not the main thing. That is the norm. So you may feel certain things, but you will bounce back. So the thing is that I should never feel. How can you artificially never feel these things? You can. You may. But Krishna is saying that ultimately, see, like if you are vibrating from one side to another side, then the vibrating aspect becomes very little and you start becoming more steady. So it is very flickering, very slightly only. Instead of going here, there, then it is just here. So the more you are centered, the better it is. Gradually, it will come back to a center, and that center is Krishna consciousness and you, your relationship to Krishna. So that will happen. So you may be disturbed, you may be undisturbed. You may be very thrilled, you may not be very thrilled. Gradually, in the maturity of your practice, you will become more and more steady. So you will be inner, peaceful and satisfied. It's not to say you won't feel happy or unhappy. That state of happy or unhappy actually disappears. And you come to a state of being satisfied. So in a state of being satisfied, there is no happiness or unhappiness. There are things that are painful and things that are not painful, and there are things that are pleasurable. And your response to them will gradually center to the point of being satisfied. This may have happened to you in time. This may happen to you sometimes. It will become more of a steady state, that you are not disturbed by these things. You are continuing your path. You are not over-endeavoring. You are not getting overly excited. You are doing these things. You are happy. So satisfaction brings with it a sense of happiness. So what happens is that even though you are not grabbing happiness and you are not grabbing distress, because you are centered in the self, not self-centered, but centered in the self, and you are steady, dhir atma, you are steady in that consciousness, there is a sense of tremendous happiness, regardless of what is happening outside you. So that state is what Krishna is talking about, and that state is attainable. And you may have experienced it from time to time. So it becomes more steady, more and more steady. Anything else?
Coming back to question 2 of Prabhupada.
The 1 minute. Sabrina had a question.
In all the points that you said, that first you fix your mind on me, or if you can't do that, then you do the regulative principles, or if you can't do that, you work for my sake, or if you can't do that, give up the results of your work, and or if you can't do that, do cultivation of knowledge, and better than that is to meditate on the impersonal form. So we are in that position, sir. We are as
Reiki healers, you have reached these last two, that you are giving up the results and you are meditating on the impersonal form. And then he says that you leave that and meditate on my personal form, because the impersonal will lead you to the personal if it's done in the right way.
So we've come.
So you've come all the way now to the personal form.
And we've come, like we've branched out and come, and then we are going direct.
Yes. Because previously you are saying, whoever there is, God help me, we don't know who's God. Reiki is some energy of the God, of the divine, of the supreme. It's like the Brahmin energy, the Brahma energy. We do not know we do not think of where the origin of that energy is, but now Krishna is teaching us mind and intelligence. You will go back to mind and intelligence being focused on Krishna. So Reiki is originating from Krishna, it is originating from Lakshmi Ji. And Lakshmi Ji is originating from Krishna ultimately. So Krishna is saying that do everything for me. So we are using the purpose of Lakshmi Ji is to serve Krishna only. So Lakshmi Ji is driving us there. So we can think of Lakshmi Ji, we can think of Krishna. So there is no problem. Lakshmi Narayan, Vishnu, Krishna, Radharani. So these are all in the zone. Lord Balram. Like that. So these are things that we should work with. And I particularly refer you to the last 4 texts, 17, 18, 19, 20, because if you look at 17, it says, Yo na harshati na dveshati, na sochati na kankshati, shubha shubha parityagi, bhaktiman yah same priya. So one who is neither grabbing happiness or pleasure and neither grabbing the grief to his bosom and being totally absorbed in that, and who is neither lamenting nor desiring and renouncing both auspicious and inauspicious things, is very dear to me. Why renouncing all these things? Because these are all materially binding karma. These attach us to the karmic consequences. These are in the zone of karam and vikaram, and we need to be in the zone of akaram, spiritual non-action. In other words, action that does not bind us to consequences of grief, happiness, distress, pleasure. So renounce these. That is the meaning. Give up this. In other words, you are on the way to giving up your binding consequences of karma, because all these are going to create binding consequences. If you infuse everything with Reiki, with Krishna's energy, doing everything for him, gradually these become free of the binding aspect. You will still get things which previously excited you a lot, or was something that normal people who are not on the devotional path would endeavor for. I want a bigger house, I want a better house, I want a bigger this, I want that. And doing only that what is required to keep your body and soul together, doing that much which is giving you enough for you to live on. And you may of course also save for future life that you may have left, so that any problems come up there, you are taking care of it, because one cannot work usually always till the end of your life. There is a retirement process, or then there is a reduced activity process, and that's the time when all these things that you have stored over your lifetime come in use to sustain you through those reduced income times, let's say, or reduced facilities. So it is a normal process that a person goes through a household life, then he goes into a life of practicing retirement, or withdrawing from the family structure, withdrawing from the false ego aspect designation of the body, in preparation for sannyas, for giving up. But the sannyas can happen internally anytime. Giving up of the attachment is actually sannyas. Lighting no fire is sannyas. That the sannyasi should not cook. He should be dependent on whatever is available by the mercy of the Lord. It's a very tough discipline. And if you look at today's sannyasis, they are living in very sumptuous palatial situations. That is not sannyasi. So that is not possible also in this age. It is, in fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has forbidden sannyas in this age. He has said no one should be sannyasi in this age because it is not possible. So it will become only a cheating process. So leaving that aside, we forget about all those things. They are not important for us. What's important for us is that we should work in the way that Krishna has told us that we should work, at whatever level, and do not do this artificially. You cannot attain any objective artificially. There may be times when you will be doing it artificially for sure. Not a problem. You stay with the process, you stay in the community of the healers, you stay with the teachings. These are the three legs of support of your entire spiritual endeavor, and you will be absolutely fine. What was the other question?
Some fanatic Muslims from Pakistan call us kafir/infidels, though it does not bother me as I know my true position and my connection to my spiritual master, in bracket yourself, and divine. But these fanatics are full of hatred and are barbaric. These fanatics seem to be fully convinced of the correctness of their own belief, faith about the divine. I feel when a situation of direct confrontation with these fanatics arises, our army or individual commanders should take proactive measures to strike them first and decimate/kill them before their nefarious designs unfold. But I feel a healer may find it hard to gather so much bloodthirstiness. What should a healer do in such a kind of situation so that he gathers and the required kind of energy, at least temporarily, to carry out this kind of action, which he may be ordered to undertake or which he may undertake on own initiative?
I have already answered this question. Basically, that you be attached to doing your duty according to your situation, and as a defender of the country, you can engage in these activities as a person in the martial forces. There is, if a person is abusing you, that is not sufficient grounds to kill someone. But if somebody is trying to force a particular way of life on you by force and on threat of your physical liberty, or on pain, or on torture, or by death, certainly it is the duty of the established constituted government to take action against it. And if you are acting as an arm of the government who has authorized you to do it, there is no hesitation. Go ahead and do it. But you cannot take matters into your own hand. A soldier may kill hundreds of people on the battlefield, but if he comes in civilian life, in civilian situation, and somebody is abusing him and he shoots him, he will be held up, he will be taken to task, he will be taken to prison, he will be prosecuted. So it's not that, okay, now I defended the country and I killed 100 enemies, now I killed this one person who was abusing for the sake of our spiritual religious tradition. That will not be considered as an excuse, because that is no different than what the terrorists are doing in any case. They are using the same argument, that it is for our cause. The Christian and Muslim wars that happened, the Crusades, also happened on the similar basis. So everybody is using religion and their belief and faith to give it some sanctity, to actually just kill and apply force to take away some assets from people, or to subjugate people, or to oppose them. So these are going on, but there is a defense system, and in defense it can be attack also. It depends on what the situation is. So leave that to the commanders and the people who are in charge of this process, the constituted government, and ignore the rest. So Krishna is saying that you should not be disturbed by these things, but you only do your duty. You cannot on your own suo moto decide what is your duty without reference to the authorities. So in the case of the army, the authorities are the commanders, the battlefield commanders, the senior commanders, the generals, and ultimately the politicians who are in charge of giving direction, go ahead and do this or don't do this. And they may very well say, okay, this is the objective, and as per your inputs, we are not telling you how to achieve it. You know how to achieve it. You are the experts. You go ahead, I want this thing done. So do it. So they do it. So that is the best way to proceed in such a case. Do not be worried about propaganda and so on. People are going to talk. They are going to say nonsense. Yes.
Sir, in the work area, if there is a verbal or an emotional instigation or trigger, how do I balance myself in Krishna consciousness not to create anxiety to the...
What do you mean an emotional trigger? Emotional verbal trigger in what sense?
So, the work environment is that I am working against basically the normal procedures. So that becomes actually hurts the ego of the engineer in charges or the architects basically. So they in fact then trigger, like for example, I was referred to Nirvan Bhavan by somebody, and there is a serious problem there, and the senior person sent me to the lower person, the assistant engineer, and he in my presence tore my card. Yes, sir. In another case, give my card to another contractor to note down scribble some notes. So then actually I can't balance myself in this.
Well, you have to tell them.
Exactly to him.
What did you do then?
Sir, I can't control my this thing.
Right. So what did you do?
So I messed up basically the meeting and walked off.
That's fine. If you don't have respect, if you don't have an understanding, you have your own axe to grind, then that's okay. Then the person who referred you or the senior is the one you should talk to.
So then actually, sir, what happens is then again create a anti-environment for me. So
that's okay.
How can I balance myself?
No. You see that this is something that where in an existing workplace people are not wanting to have your inputs because it shows them up, it makes them look bad, or it calls into question their competence. So you should say it. That, I'm not here to call your competence into question, I'm here to help you. You don't want my help, that's fine. So you should never let it get to that point. If you are going there and saying, you have not been able to do so, you have called me, or I have been called because you all have been unsuccessful, so you are starting off on the wrong foot.
No. Actually, now I have blended a lot.
No. Please understand what I am saying. So you need to get the people on your side, get them cooperative, and you have to figure out how to do that. That's not the discussion that we are going to be having today. That's a management, interpersonal, human relationship kind of situation that you need to work out. But the guidance you can take from here is that if you are going to offend someone, or if you are going to be offended, you will not achieve your objective. That is the key. So don't be offended and don't be offensive. Okay, you don't want it, it's all right. There are plenty other places. I'm already doing work for the army, I'm doing work for this one, I'm doing work for that one. I'm here to help. If you don't need my help, that's absolutely fine. Please carry on. And then you inform the superiors that, this is what happened and, I'm okay. They don't want me to work on it. It's all right. It's up to you. Because in any management situation, the person who's on the ground, whatever he says, a lot of weight will be given to that. Because then he'll say, okay, now it's on your responsibility. I've washed my hands of it. Anything goes wrong, you're this thing. So it's a very bureaucratic procedure. So you need to work out how to get around bureaucracy. That is a different story. But you need not be offensive, and you need not give offense. You need not go out of the way to give offense. That is the thing. Okay? See, earlier Krishna has said, Sarva dharman parityaje mam ekam sharanam braja. So you should give up everything and come into his service, is the bottom line of this chapter. Vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. So this is the expansion of that. So we will conclude here. We have completed text 20. We have completed the entire chapter on Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, and next time we will review this again, and I would suggest that you study this chapter, and we will discuss this again next week. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, thank you all for coming. We will conclude here. You can sign off.
Shipra is grateful.
Okay. All right then. See you next week. Bye bye.
You've been listening to Nalin K. Narula on GettingPositiveKarmaNow.com.